introduce a story, Your Excellency. So I represent LATO, and we are the first company, I'm Kenyan, and we are currently, sorry. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so Your Excellency, we are currently present in 15 countries exporting from Uganda, and we've also now invested in Kenya. So we just wanted to share you the journey of how we made it successful in Uganda and how we can also make it successful in Kenya, right? So you touched on the right points about how do we help the farmers, the small-scale farmers. Some of the things that we've been doing is the biggest issue that the farmer has is money. A lot of training can be done for the farmers. They all know what needs to be done. They need to feed the cow. They need feed. They know that the weather is very predictable, but nobody's storing silage for the dry weather. So when it comes to smallholder farmers, the thing that we need to do the most is actually how do we provide affordable finance to the farmers at realistic interest rates so that they can invest for silage and for the cows to manage the seasonality, which is the biggest issue on the farms. The second issue that we work with farms is now we've started growing maize of our own, and it's better because when it comes to what you mentioned, that other people are growing maize and they're trying to sell to dairy farmers, there's always a margin that the other person wants to make. But if a processor is the one who grows the maize, he can always make it up in the milk business. So there's more incentive if a processor is directly involved in the growing of fodder and silage, because that's when we can always balance off the upside in the milk profits with that. The third thing is regarding exports. I think people need to kind of realize about how milk is exported, right? So milk can either be exported in liquid form or in powder form. Liquid can only go to your immediate neighbor, right? And if you look at the immediate neighbors that we have of Kenya, they're not really drinking a lot of liquid milk. So effectively, if Kenya wants to have a meaningful export of milk, it has to be in the form of either cheese or in the form of powder. Now, these are the only two products which can then travel distances, whether we're talking of West Africa, Algeria, and so on. Now, when you go to these markets, it's very difficult to just trade it purely. So for example, if I'm a producer in Kenya and I produce a bag of powder, the customer in Congo has options of buying from New Zealand and from Kenya. Why will he buy the Kenyan one, right? And so effectively what tends to happen is you start getting an African discount, right? And that further puts pressure on the cost that you need to get to sell in those markets. Now, generally what happens with companies such that have done it successfully globally is that not only do they have production in Kenya, but they go and set up distribution in these markets. That's what we've done as LATO. So all these 15 countries we sell to, not only do we just dump the products there, but we also go and build a brand there and invest in marketing so that you link the farmer to the end consumer. If the minute you have intermediaries in the channel, you will not be competitive. It's more like the fuel business, where the petrol stations they own the petrol station and they also own the oil that they're producing. So the issue of if Kenya wants to become an exporter of powder, then it has to fix cost of production. They've discussed here numbers of we are at 760 and Uganda is at 500 and something, and globally. So globally, the price of powder has averaged $4,000 a ton. So for us to even get to, right now it's at $2,500 because of the oversupply, but 10-year average is $4,000 a ton. So if we look at $4,000 a ton, we would need prices in the range between of 30 and 40 shillings for you to even do a powder business. And if you want to get to that price point, you need to remove intermediaries for the farmer. Because the minute we have so many suppliers supplying the farmer, then the cost will always go up. And the only way you can do that is that if the farmer starts doing majority of the inputs on farm. Now, globally, there are 3 or 4 countries which control more than 60% of global exports. These are Ireland, New Zealand, and basically what they have is that 90% of the farming is pasture-based. So if we promote our farmers to go more intensive, we are going to breach that 35 shilling cost of production. We need to teach our farmers to go less intensive. That's what's happening in Uganda. They don't have any supplementary feed. There is no concentrate. There is no animal feed. They only feed the cow what's available in the shamba. So effectively, if we want the dairy sector to grow, the growth has to be sustainable. If we're going to grow it at paying 50 shillings and buying external fodder and external concentrates, it's not sustainable. The other issue which we've had in the market, Your Excellency, is that malnutrition is a big issue in the region. 30% of our children are stunted. Milk is the solution. They're saying the population of East Africa is going to double in the next 10 years. 30% of that children, if they're going to be stunted, what are we growing? What are we bringing into this, to this world? And milk is the solution for it. So milk consumption is important, that we encourage milk consumption. But the challenge we're facing right now is that as we increase the price, like with the minimum pricing of milk going up, most of the processors' sales have gone down in the past 2 years. So increasing the price to support the farmer is not sustainable, because the consumer, on the other hand, who are 50 million versus the 5 million, are now reducing milk, and then malnutrition is going up. So at the end of the day, everything comes back down to productivity and the cost of the farm. Now, I think we've spoken a lot of things here. If we want effects from the milk, it has to go, milk price has to start coming down, and the farmer's cost has to start coming down. And then you need to get into the powder business. If we want to, we still have a very big domestic market, but for that, we need the price of milk actually for consumers to start going down. And then we've got certain products like, fermented products, mala and yogurts and flavored milk. I sell both in Uganda and Kenya. Statistically, Uganda now drinks more flavored milk than Kenya, which would shock all of you, but it does, right? And the simple reason is Uganda doesn't have any VAT on flavored milk, which is good for the nutrition of the children. In Kenya, we've got the VAT, which is 16%. So a mother will basically say, I'd rather just give chai, which I have to just mix the ingredients at home myself, than give flavored milk to my kid, because it becomes only a product for the rich, not for the bottom and the middle class. So this is just a few comments, Your Excellency, and we are here to support your processes. We believe that the East African community, because we work in East Africa, that we can feed the whole of Africa. There's around $5 billion of imports of dairy in Africa, 5 billion. If you look at the cows that we've got between Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda, and we combine the strength of these 3 countries, and we start working on the cost of production, we can actually take over more than $2 billion of imports that the African continent has. Algeria does 1.2 billion alone of imports. But again, they have the option of importing from New Zealand and from Europe. So we would always need to be at the same price. And it will all work, and I fully agree with you. It all starts with how we as processors and government start at the farm. And if we can get the cost at the farm right, we can then conquer the continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you allow me to ask you one
or
two?
Please.
So, of course, you know where we are. 84% of Kenya is arid and semi-arid. So pasture is a challenge, so we have the only, and that's why we are having a conversation about feed, because it's the only option that's available to us. So the reality is we do not have as much pasture as Uganda, because our area of operation is limited. What you have said, which I thought was useful, is how do processors make it their business also to bulk feed, to supply to the dairy farmers. Is that a consideration? I think processors should be able to exercise their minds. They have much more latitude. They have much more access to capital than individual farmers. the farmer of 1 acre, 2 cows, 3 cows, doesn't have the kind of muscle that you can master. The same way we are investing in milk cool chain facility. Is it possible for processors to consider also investing in the food chain, you know, the feed, so that we are all trying to assist the farmer to remove the middle guys, because he's buying one set of feed from one person who is making a margin, another person is making a margin, another guy is making a margin, and sometimes he's not even buying from the producer himself, he's buying from a middleman, and that's how he ends up with the short end of the stick. Is it the case that even processors can also consider how they can work with farmers? I think the same thing Kenneth was saying, that in Meru, they are thinking of running a feed mill to see how they can support their farmers. Is that something
it actually works globally that way in many countries, and we would be doing the same in Kenya as we're ramping up our collection centers. So the coolers that you're giving us, they normally come, you need to build a building around it. And the idea now is that how do you convert the coolers to become shops so that it is a two-way traffic rather than just one-way traffic. And so effectively the coolers then would have feed and inputs that then the farmers can batter against the milk, and then processors would then take the responsibility for providing those inputs at a lower price. That's what works globally, and that's what we would suggest we implement in Kenya as well. As we get the coolers from government, we manage and provide feed and other items at cost, sometimes even with a subsidy. Because at the end of the day, if you know that you're going to make back the money on the volume, then subsidies are not a challenge for business people.
I think that should have been an occasion for the processors to stand again, to agree that they will they will support the farmers with the feed, you know. And I think we can then facilitate and make sure that the milk coolers we are setting up with the support of the county governments, we also improve the facilities around it so that you can also get feed from this facility, maybe even get some acaricides and some of the vaccines, and make the whole ecosystem work for the farmer, because ultimately it's important. Yeah. Sindio? Okay.